And so it's about 4 past 11. So people may be joining as we start, but I'll go ahead and hand it off to Rob Bull from the Compass Group as one of the speakers today. And in a bit, he and Caitlin will go over some ground rules for today's webinar.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Bull, and I am with the Compass Group, and delighted that all of you are here this morning. I'm seeing a bunch of new friends and former clients, and really just a lot of folks I know I need to follow up with and connect with you directly. So just thank you so much for being here. The Compass Group is a fundraising consulting firm, and we build the capacity of our clients to raise more money every day. And that sometimes means dissecting the smaller things. And that's what you're going to see in our workshop today. I ran into idfive, for those of you who are wondering why we're teaming up on this, ran into idfive probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And then we found ourselves sort of in the same room in front of the same board members and many of the same clients in the work that we do from a fundraising point of view and then branding and marketing point of view. So we said to ourselves, why don't we do this work together and start to look at some topics? And that's what you're going to see today. So I am really delighted to be partnering with idfive and my colleague here, Caitlin Currey. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will get started. Caitlin.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rob. My name is Caitlin. I'm the Associate Vice President of Creative Strategy at idfive. I get to lead a diverse team of designers, user experience experts, strategists, and copywriters to solve complex challenges for our higher education, health, nonprofit, and big local clients who are doing good in the world. idfive serves brands who are on a mission. A really fun fact is that my first job out of college was the resource and marketing director for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Savannah. I have no idea why at 21 someone thought I should direct anything. But what I did get to see very early on in my career was the impact and magic that can happen when marketing and advancement come together to do good in the world for clients who are doing amazing things. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're really thrilled that you are spending an hour and 15 minutes of your time on a Wednesday with us. So with that, we'll get started. We have a few learning outcomes, some things that we want to accomplish in our time together today. The first is really understand that the end is the beginning. It's really easy to go through the giving season and all of its chaos and all of its demands and get to the end and think, whew, I'm done. We can start thinking about 2022 later. But that's really a misnomer. It's important to think of the giving season as a launching of your donor strategy for 2022, and we'll talk more about that. We'd like to figure out how to identify major gift donors. Where are they? Who are they? And then also, how do you engage them? How do you make sure that all of that momentum you've built up over the giving season the prior year can stay with that momentum throughout 2022? And then finally, to make a major gift plan. We'll give you some tips and tricks and ideas for how to continue to engage donors at every level, but specifically how to elevate that relationship to the major gift level. We have a few housekeeping things just before we get started. The first is Jess will probably mute you if you start making noise, but it's important to just keep your microphone muted so that everyone can hear what we're talking about. There's going to be plenty of time for discussion at the end, and hopefully even a little bit in the presentation. If you want to ask any questions, you can do so in the chat. If everybody would like to take a look at the bottom black bar of this Google Meet screen, you can see a little box, bubble chat box over on the right. That's where you can ask a question. Jess and Peter and a few others from idfive are going to help moderate that. So please feel free to ask questions throughout, and we're happy to come back to it at the end of the presentation or during the presentation if it's pertinent. And then finally, as we mentioned before, this is, there you go, thanks, Peter. This is being recorded. So if you'll all nod your head with permission or give a thumbs up or, tell us right now if that's not okay, we're going to assume it's fine and keep going. Awesome. Okay, so to set the stage for the sort of importance of the giving season and what happens in the giving season. As many of you know, especially in advancement, though I know we have a ton of marketing friends here too, we thought it would be great to start with some statistics from the past 2 roller coaster years to set the stage for how important it is and how it can be the beginning of your 2022 donor strategy. So there was a 21% increase of online philanthropic giving in 2020 compared to 2019, which is actually continuing an ongoing trend that has seen online contributions increase 32% over the past 3 years. The rate for first-year online donor retention was 25% in 2020. However, multi-year, we've actually seen online-only donor retention at 66%. So it's changing, it's shifting. Finally, between 70 and 75% of one-time donations are from brand new donors on days like Giving Tuesday and December 31st. So how you follow up with these donors, how you retain their support and re-engage them in future efforts plays a huge role in your success for the next year. So in that light, you can see that January becomes one of the most important times to connect with your donors, both new and returning. Again, January through April are really critical moments in donor retention. What these numbers tell us is that the supporters you worked so hard to bring in, especially those who came in during Giving Tuesday and year-end campaigns, can really easily disappear. And this can be detrimental to more than just your fundraising efforts, especially if you're paying a high donor acquisition cost. As most of you know, it's a lot easier to keep the donors that you have than it is to go out and get new donors. So keeping them engaged, telling them more stories, helping them understand how they can connect with your mission is important. All right, so this is what those of us in marketing and advancement like to think of as an activation journey. We create these at idfive for every effort that is multi-channel over a course or period of time to better help us understand where are people coming from, what is their mindset, and how do we get them to the next phase. So I will go over this briefly. I think the biggest thing to see here is that you've developed all of this momentum, as you can see in the top left. You have sent out emails and newsletters to past donors, to present donors, telling them stories, inviting them to events, asking them to give. You have printed alumni magazines or magazines sponsored by the organization where you've talked about specific highlights and stories of impact. You have engaged with folks on social media, a wide variety of audiences through things like imagery and surveys, highlights, and news. For PR, you've sent out press releases announcing campaigns and donor stories, all related to your organization. A lot of times we've mailed out solicitation letters to donors who have actively engaged with us in that way. Some of us are even engaging in paid media so that you can reach new audiences beyond the confines of what organic marketing may do. And also we've got our ambassadors, our volunteers, our board members who are out in the world. They've spent all of giving season beating your drum and telling your story. So you've done all of this activity. You've got an engaged access to donors and constituents. And we're driving them to areas like events, to one-on-one and in-person meetings, and we're driving them to our giving websites. So if they've gone through all of these activities, they've developed an affinity for you, they've begun to understand your story, and ultimately we're asking them to give. Giving can look very different depending on an organization's mission. Giving time and giving money are the 2 biggest things, as you know. Time can be volunteering or being on a board or engaging in a specific event. And then, of course, there's giving money, which is a wonderful thing too. So all of this leads you to this box over here that you see in that yellow. If it's successful and they gave their time, they gave their money, they engaged with us and elevated their profile with us, that's what we're talking about today. You got them where you want them in the giving season. How do you make sure it doesn't end there? If they don't end up engaging with us, we're of course going to go all the way back over into the awareness phase and keep telling them stories and trying to engage with them to get them over to the giving side of things. So at a very high level, this is all of the work you've done prior to the giving season. This is the giving season. And now today we're going to talk about how do we keep them engaged? So again, congrats. You've done all the things. You've put all of the effort into an amazing giving season. Now what? And I'll turn it over to Rob to talk about what we do now.
Thanks much. So this is the fun part, or at least for us. I love partnering with our friends in marketing and communications, because they're sort of drumming up the pot. They're contributing to membership and annual giving and just making more friends. So I like to look at that as they're managing this massive seasonal party for the holidays, right? And then the vultures from development, or those who really fall on the major gift side or are thinking about that, see that as opportunity between January and April to make those new friends and feed them into a more intentional system for investments. So I like to say to myself, of all the folks that have appeared in the space of the season, I'm looking at it as who came to the party, right? To have fun with it. What did they drink? Sometimes they brought a friend. That could be a new person coming into the scene. You know, how much fun did they have? Or did they come into the space and then leave early, right? Or were they the last to leave and they make a very intentional statement about, we really like it here and we enjoyed coming to the party. So I want to pay attention to all of that. And this is work that sometimes you just don't want to do, but it's that little piece that connects all of the marketing and communication that goes on with the work of development to follow up and make those new friends and realize investments for the future. Okay. So now what we want to do is I want to carry you through sort of what do I look for once we've built this community, sort of what do we look for? All right. So first, it's first-time donors, right? And a lot of this won't be news to you, but I want to remind you of what these items are, because I want you to think of them differently. Sometimes when folks present things differently, it gives you that aha moment, and it gives you some framework in which to do this work. All right, so first-time donors, I'm always interested in what inspired them, right? Where did they come from? What did it take? But the two things that I pay attention to as well is, did they come in through direct mail? That still exists, or online? And here's why. On the direct mail side, if they actually took the time to write a check, that's a profile of an individual that we can say to ourselves, they may need that handwritten thank you note, right? If they are really key and important, that's how they like to engage. If they come at the organization online for the first time, that establishes a preference as to how they want to communicate, right? This isn't the individual that wants the big, thick annual report in paper, right? They're going to look for that electronic link. So I try to gather as much as I can about the profile of that first-time donor, and particularly if this is someone that I want to continue a relationship with. All right, second-time donors. Here's what I think about second-time donors. You get a first-time donor. If you get them to give a second time, that's really important. That means they should absolutely be given a third time, because you've got to pick them up right away, right? You got to be paying attention to that. Someone shouldn't be sneaking in to give you a second time gift and you're not pay attention to it. I like to say at that point, they're really digging your mission, right? There's something about you that they've heard or seen or experienced, and they are in it. They're in it twice now. Sometimes a specific story has resonated with them, and the content is really relevant for their a good match for their philanthropy. And remember, if they've given a second time during this season specifically, it could be related to taxes. So tax incentives and things of that nature. So I wanted to place that in there just the same. It sometimes helps to sort donors along the way. All right, then there's the sizable donor. Oh, and you know this. The sizable donor is if you've got that membership annual fund, they're not giving in the hundreds. They write that first check and they're giving, or the second check, and they give you that $1,000 or $1,500 or $5,000 out of nowhere, right? These are the individuals that are trying to make a statement. They are raising their hand and they're saying, pay attention to me, right? And this is probably the category that we pay attention to most, but it's still relevant in the science of fundraising and how we do our work today. Sometimes I've found they're following a friend. So they were introduced to the organization. That friend gave at that larger level. they're following suit, and I want to pay attention because I want to keep them there. Then there are our lapsed donors. Boy, I love these. This is like a double win for me. If someone comes back to the organization, I love it. Why? Because they already know you. They gave before. There's been a lapse of time, whether it's been a year, 2 years, or 3 years, but you got them back. And I find that some of these, the profile of some of these individuals, they're not really associating themselves with a calendar. They gave because they were inspired, and you're trying to find out what took them so long to come back, right? But that's okay. You got them. They gave in this giving season, and we want to hold on to them. And then sometimes I've also found that you're back in good grace. We do have our donors that veer off, or for some reason they lose touch. But there's something about the experience, and I try to find that out that got them back in your under your tent. And finally, the last one that I look for, I just title it sort of institutional kind of giving. And it sort of wraps in if someone all of a sudden makes a planned gift, right? That's a little more sophistication. So I'm going to pay attention to them. And those kinds of gifts can come out of nowhere. Sometimes just responding to something that you already have set up online. If someone gives via a donor advised fund, however much it is, that's a sophistication about their philanthropy that's saying to me, wow, I can gain a lot of ground on this one. I want to talk to that individual that has set up a donor advised fund and they're giving during the giving season. And then finally, if there's an employee match program, that too means they've taken the time to fill out the paperwork or the online system for getting their dollars matched. So there again, make for a great candidate for you to pay attention to, pull out of the larger pool and say, I'm going to invest more in them to move them toward a major gift. All right, so everyone got that. So that's just how I think on a service. There may be some other things that you think about as you're combing through your database or those that respond to appeals during the giving season. But we're going to carry on this party theme for a little longer, and I'm going to invite Caitlin back to help me talk about the relationship that we build and where do we move them from here. So we got 6 levels for you. 6 levels of once you identify, set to the side those few that actually qualify that you want to pay attention to, then it's a matter of how much of an investment do you have to make? And it really is, how far are they away from making a major contribution to the organization? So we tried to outline this into 6 levels here, which we're going to walk you through. Level 0 is the person that showed up at the party with a no-show, right? They didn't show up at all. So the relationship hasn't gone too far. Usually these are the individuals that are in your larger pool, all right? They have high capacity, you verified that, but they have little to no philanthropic history. So you kind of don't know where to go with them. But they showed up in a way that they were worth sending an invitation to. And that's about all you know about them. What do we do with that, Caitlin?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things to note about this, somebody who sort of RSVP'd but didn't show up, something piqued their interest. Something made them decide, I have some sort of connection with the mission of this organization and I want to know more. Not enough such that they actually showed up, but enough that they're paying attention. And that's where it's important to go back to that activation journey and say, okay, where did they come in from? What piqued their interest? What did they click on? What did they engage with us on? How can I do more of that? So as always, with any donor, as soon as they make contact or put any time investment or money behind what they're interested in, you want to thank them for contact immediately. As we know, immediacy and following up quickly while they're engaged, while their interest has been piqued is really important. You want to invite them to social channels. So you don't know what they're paying attention to. Maybe you know that they signed up for your newsletter, but you've noticed that they aren't on any of your social channels, and you haven't had a lot of contact one-on-one with them before. So you want to make sure they know where they can keep in touch with what you're doing. And you also want to include an impact quote or story. That may sound obvious, but you can do some digging on some of these sort of profiles to see, okay, what are they interested in? What kind of story might resonate from our organization? who could tell that story best that might align the most with who they are and what they're interested in. So these are some of the ways that you can advance the friendship or relationship without investing too much time, because they're still at a level 0. And you've got folks in the next 5 categories who are a little more engaged than this potential donor.
So level 1. So for those that showed up during the giving season, a 1 is not too far ahead of a 0. And it's usually that unannounced friend who showed up with a guest, right? And you just have no idea who they are. You don't know much about them. They probably tend to travel in circles with major gift prospects. But again, the capacity is still yet to be determined. We don't know much about them. But they actually showed up to the party. They made a contribution. They raised their hand. You can see that they have read something. So sometimes that's an indication. All of those entry-level relationship establish sort of key indicators. That's what I place at a level 1. So I'm going to put all those folks in one category because then I'm going to treat them a little different than the level 0.
Perfect. Yeah. And so again, we're going to want to thank them for contacting us. I think this is a great opportunity and should be seen as somebody, a 1 could probably pretty easily move up quickly, depending on their capacity for giving. And also, if they're coming with a friend, they want to be seen and they're not quite ready to announce themselves yet or make a big scene, but they're starting to get into the idea and mission of your organization. So how do we tell them more? So again, thank them for contact. If you're able to get from that friend that you know, asking, hey, can I get their email information? Can I send them a follow-up? Asking them, what are you interested in? What brought you to the event? What kinds of content would you like to see from us? Would be a great way to begin a conversation, making sure you understand how you can align with what they're personally interested in. So an invitation to the next event, I think, is an expectation. I showed up to the gala. Am I going to get invited to the luncheon? I showed up to this thing. Am I on the guest list for the next thing? And again, always including quotes or stories. And for this guest or for this level, from a well-known donor. So saying, yeah, you're in the right place. You're with the right players here. This is where you should be too. And you know that now because I'm including a quote or an impact story from another donor that may be like you.
So here's where it starts to get a little more involved. I hope that most of those that you identify, you're putting at a level 2 or above. All right. So this is the individuals that we call them. They attend general events, but they've attended something a little more private for the first time. So now I'm really paying attention because I've got some intimate time with them. They have clearly established themselves as entering the community and space, and their profile tends to be, you know more about them, you know that they give to your industry, but they probably give more to other organizations when you research them than your organization itself. So certainly worthy of paying attention to, absolutely. And again, I hope that most of the folks that that you identify out of your seasonal giving fall at a level 2 or above, and you've got something to work with. These are the individuals that I'm beginning to invest by far more in than anyone else.
Yeah, so again, we want to thank them for their continued support, keyword continued, acknowledging that they've been with you for a little while, maybe not at the level, wouldn't indicate this in the thank you, but not at the level that you're hoping they would, but thank you for continuing to support us with time, with money, and with attention. And this is where we can start getting a little more personal. So everything else we've talked about to this point is sort of bundled together. It can feel personal, but at the end of the day, we're talking about emails, we're talking about newsletters and social media and things like that. At a level 2, we need to start getting a little more personal. We need to start seeing how we can move them and elevate the friendship. So one of the ways we've seen a lot of success is with a survey or an opportunity, for instance, to join a webinar with the president or CEO along with some other folks to get their questions answered about What is the organization planning? What does the strategic plan look like, so that they can begin seeing themselves in that plan or supporting or advancing that plan? So something where it's a two-way street. We're not just talking at them now, we're really asking them to give us information back. And the last note here is we want to also elevate the gift stories. So whereas before we're talking about impact more broadly in levels 0 and 1, starting at level 2, we want to start telling stories of larger impact from larger gifts to inspire them to start considering if maybe a larger gift is an opportunity for the future.
And Caitlin, I'm gonna just backtrack on the two-way street there. One of the things that we find ourselves doing on the major gift side is finding creative ways so that there is that two-way street. For those that use the definition of a touch versus a contact, a touch is that one way, all that one-way communication that's going out. And that's that magazine, that newsletter, that even if you send a donor a link of something very specific. Two-way is any creative way you can do to make them respond, right? So you're asking them a very specific question and you are really engaging them in something very specific in the subject matter of the mission of the organization. And as soon as they respond back, boy, that's when you know you got them. That's a happy day in the Office of Development. So, and then that's what gets us to 3. Okay, so level 3. This person has a history of being the life at the party. When you get this person, when you identify this person in your giving season, they certainly are delighted to be invited. They may have given to you over and over again. They are really saying, I'm a party goer, I'm having a great time. The profile of this individual typically is they can be consistent and at expressing their philanthropy, or sometimes random. They're right at this level 3 place where it's hard to peg them, right? And you don't know whether they're there just for the party and showing up, or whether they are really interested in making a deeper investment. But what you do know is that they will spend time in your space and give you an audience and give you attention. So because of that, this enables you hopefully to move forward a little more assertively and get their audience.
So we always, again, want to thank them for their continued support. But now you really want to Rob's point, think about a menu of engagement opportunities and kind of, as he said, be a little more assertive. How do you want to engage with us? Would you like to host a private, if they showed up and were best dressed in the life of the party, they don't mind being seen. They probably want some recognition. They probably want to show their friends and other folks that they're supporting. You can use that. So asking them, how can we do more together? And what would that look like for you? What would make the most sense? Is it hosting a private event just with you and some donors like you? Is it a luncheon? Is it, there are many different opportunities, but providing them with a menu of engagement vehicles to sustain that relationship and letting them give you that feedback is great. You can also ask for introductions to donors like them. So that networking opportunity, hey, I see you've got friends with these people or these folks. I think they'd be really interested in these strategic initiatives that are coming up in the next year. If I could get an audience with you both over lunch or dinner, I'd love to walk them through that. Things like that, that's both personal and specific. And you always want to think of the people who are best dressed or the life of the party as wanting recognition. And so because of that, we do this with a lot of alumni, and we've done this with large donors at nonprofits. Ask them their story. Why personally does the mission of our organization align with you? There's usually a pretty great story there, and they usually don't mind if they're this profile if you tell it to other people. Use them as an opportunity to start beating the drum a little bit louder.
So Caitlin, I have often used almost impromptu focus groups to bring small groups together. When I say small, I mean exactly as you said, 2 or 3 donors for a coffee. And I will describe it as, I would love to connect with you and 2 or 3 other of our supporters to get your feedback on X, or to get your thoughts around, and it's a way in which to put together a little bit of a gathering. You know that there's going to be some good discussion, and you can then introduce people, like-minded individuals in your community to others. So I love it when I can get just a couple of folks together around a coffee, a lunch, or a dinner, and they may not even know each other. All right, level 4. This is the party goer that they really enjoyed themselves, and they tell you how much they miss the organization, how much they had a great time. They are doing more than raising their hand. They are articulating the mission and the importance of getting more people under the tent. These are our superstars. For those that are a level 4 in the giving season, because they are participating, I'm going to invest everything in these individuals because I know that they are just on the cusp of investment. Their profile suggests that they've shown interest, typically already, with your organization or other organizations. They've previously supported you. They may have been participants in a previous fundraising effort or campaign, or have been consistently giving a restricted gift somewhere. So they are into you, right? And I would say 4 and higher, I'm putting most of my resources toward that in any way possible to befriend them, because they deserve the best.
Yeah, so we want to thank them for their long-term support. So this is where that personal letter is important. This is where something that's more handwritten, something that feels very direct, doing your background research, making sure you understand the level that they gave, what initiatives they gave to, reminding them of the initiatives coming up that align with things they've been interested in before. This is where you want to make sure all of that research and you know who you're talking to when you engage with this kind of donor. It's also an opportunity now. It's time for them to start spending some quality time with the organizational leadership, for them to feel that, feel the love of the organization at its highest level. So this is where we're pulling in other board members, we're pulling in leadership to have one-on-one conversations with them about even sometimes their ideas of where they'd like to see the organization headed in the future. This is a level 4 or level 5 conversation, depending on the size of gifts that they've given in the past. But this is the kind of thing you want to make really personal. And you're also, again, like the level 3, but even more at level 4, inviting other VIP donors that look like them to the table, allowing them to hear impact stories. Someone met someone at the organization and was astounded by a professorship that they were able to sponsor, or they're excited about the building that's being erected next year that they have named. You want to pull these people together to start, not competition, but to be inspired by the level that their friends and people like them have been able to give to the organization. So level 4 is, like Rob said, a place to spend a lot of time and effort.
So something, Caitlin, that I have helped our clients to do is at a level 4 is to create what we call donor field trips. And donor field trips, over the past decade sort of just exploded as a way to bring your members of your community, your donors who have the highest potential. How do you bring them as close to your mission as they physically can be in order to help push them over to that investment? And sometimes for a college or university, it is touring that research and science lab, right? You're actually bringing them into the space so that they can engage with the technology and the students and equipment. For some of our conservation clients, boy, they would put together the best hikes in the middle of Yellowstone National Park. But really, it's all about how do you give them that experience, get them as close to your mission as you possibly can, because they deserve it. And at this point, they almost expect to be treated differently, right? Because they've proven themselves in the past, and they feel as though they are a philanthropic partner for your organization. All right, that brings us to level 5, our last one. So this one is the person that gets a little tipsy and invites themselves to the next engagement. And I think that kind of profile. This is more than raising your hand. This is they've got ideas. They're really into it. They are giving you suggestions about the next donor engagement or what to do. Sometimes that can be a little exhausting, but we still want to give those individuals attention just the same. Their profile usually suggests that they are committed to that specific sector. They have been in that sector for a long time. But there's another side of it. Sometimes they're also distracted by new and shiny things. So we got to be careful with individuals that show up right at a level 5. I'm still going to want to do my work in qualifying them, but I would say they're worthy of investment until you can actually determine that they're serious about connecting their philanthropy with your need. But most of the individuals that you identify during your giving season, they shouldn't be at a level 5 already, or you would have already known them. This is about how do we get them there, and this would be at the highest level possible. Again, that deserves lots of attention.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things for those folks who are sort of attracted to shiny new objects, maybe there was just this really wonderful press release, or you created content during the giving season that piqued their interest, and now they've engaged with you in a really big way, and you're kind of excited but cautiously optimistic about their continued support at that level. Immediacy is the most important thing. You've got them, they're paying attention. Likely there's going to be another nonprofit organization or higher education institution that's going to go do something awesome very soon. So how do you keep them engaged and invested in your mission? The answer is personalization and immediacy. So the first thing you want to do is schedule a private follow-up. Schedule something where they are connecting with organizational leadership and board members right away. Maybe even other donors like them, to see like long-term donors. What has that relationship looked like with this other long-term donor? Wow, this organization has really helped them develop a new institute or a new priority or a new strategic vision for the organization. Maybe I can do something like that, they might think, while seeing how someone else has had a long-term relationship with the organization. So I think this is also an opportunity to start seeing if maybe they would be interested in guiding some of those strategic priorities. What would you like to see? What have you been inspired by that you think we might be able to do more of? Bringing them into those conversations and putting them a little bit in the driver's seat is a really great opportunity to show that you're paying attention, you value their input and their time and their money, and that you want them to be a long-term partner and friend. You also want to start getting them in publications. So one of the ways to get someone to be a long-term donor is for you to make a public show, if they're comfortable, of course, with the idea that they've now given. So featuring them in the next publication or alumni magazine, featuring them in a press release, if that makes sense, making sure their profile is on publications that you send out. You want to engage with them, and you want to publicize in ways that are appropriate the level of gift that they've made, so that they feel invested, and the community around them knows also that they're invested and may help keep them invested in your mission and organization.
And I must mention, I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, there's a pitfall with level 5 donors in your community, and that is they love us already, so we're going to put them off for a little while, and we concentrate on others that we feel as though need some work. So when Caitlin talks about that immediate kind of follow-up, can't tell you how vulnerable someone coming in at a level 5 can truly be, because they can get talk about shiny objects. This is they can get distracted and veer off somewhere else because they're starving for that attention. They just are. So how quickly you follow up, and how you follow up, and how you engage them and value them as a partner is just hugely important, particularly if you are gearing up for a major fundraising effort in the future.
Perfect. So I wanted to pause here for just a second and acknowledge this is what we've walked through. We've shown you all the ways you've engaged with folks during the giving season. We've shown you, for those who you've garnered some success with them, whether they've given time or money, you've pulled them into buckets and profiles to better understand how they showed up and how you can elevate your friendship. And we've talked about the those profiles, those buckets, how much they've given, and some different tactics or strategies for how you can keep them engaged. But at the end of the day, you can do all of this, but if you don't have a good story to tell, if you don't have a specific story about your organization that is emotional, compelling, consistent, and impactful, all of that doesn't matter. So what we've covered today is really the first part, which is, who are my donors that gave during giving season? What did they look like? How did they show up? And how do I keep them engaged as a donor strategy for 2022? But your next step, and what is maybe not even the next step, but the parallel step, is how you get them to care. So you have found these profiles. You've got now to tell them a story that resonates with them, and not just one story, but many phases of story, additive stories that make them feel something about the organization. And this, I think, is where marketing and advancement, and where Rob and I and ID5 and Compass have shown up so many times, and you can do this internally to tell that story, to work together to craft the story of an organization that will resonate with folks. So one of the ways you do that is with an individualized plan. Not everybody needs an individualized plan per se. As Rob mentioned, we're going to spend most of our time on individualization and personalization, those personal touches, the one-on-one kinds of touches that require more of a time investment from the organization. That's from really level 3 to 5. But even for level 0, 1, and 2, you want to come up with an activation journey like we saw before. Okay, what are the different strategies and things that I can do to usher them through the organization and through to the next level of being a donor? So you want to come up with that individualized plan. This is where the DODs and the development folks can, specifically from levels 3 to 5, nail down all that research, all of that information to help you better understand the donor that you're talking to, what their likes and interests are, and how you can begin to align your mission of the organization specifically with what they're interested in and what has piqued their interest. And you want to tell them stories that they'll care about. And again, this is where it's really important for you to engage both marketing and advancement together to ensure that the story that you're telling is both the larger organization story, not just the advancement or giving or the giving campaign side of things, but where is the organization headed? What does that mean for the world? What is the impact on the community? What does that say maybe about me that I might want to or have already given to the organization, and how does it make me feel? So crafting those specific stories that get people to think and feel is how you need to proceed with all of the tactics and strategies that we've outlined today.
And Caitlin, I think Jessica's about to tell us there's some questions in the box, right?
We do have one question from Susan. She's asking about if you could share more about first major gifts after you about the first major gift received from a new donor and the process to sustain that without them being a stalker. You can see that in the chat box.
Okay, can you share more about after your first major gift is received from a new donor, the process to sustain them without being a stalker? Oh, I see. Yeah, because if they, you may have more to add, Caitlin. So if someone surprises you and usually they make that first major gift for the first time and they are a new donor, we know that how much time do you have to put in between stalking them for that second investment, right? That's always a balance, if you will. Here's what I would say, and I think this is a great question for bridging development and marketing and communications. Stewardship is something that we don't do well in the industry. I just haven't come across too many organizations that do stewardship well. And, that is not just that we say thank you, not just how we say thank you, but it's how we show the impact, right, of their philanthropy on the organization and show them the value of the gift that they just made. If you're doing it really well and you are keeping your first-time donors and first-time major gift donors close to you, you're constantly feeding them information that's making them feel good about their investment. That's just key. Can't even begin to tell you. And if you do it really well, they're almost on the edge of their seats asking about what's next. So you don't have to stalk them as much. They are in it and they want to know how can they have an even greater impact. And you begin to see signs of that and feel that. So to answer your question in short, it's all in the stewardship, showing the impact of their investment, their philanthropy on the mission of the organization or what the gift was intended to do.
Yeah, I would add to that, Susan. I think from a marketing standpoint, where you can be personalized and a little, to use your stalker terminology here, creepy, is to ask your marketing department, where the heck did these guys come from or this person come from? They can't, if hopefully they're not popping up out of nowhere, but take a look at what they've engaged with from you. Did they open newsletters? Were they always answering or responding to surveys? Have they engaged with you on social media? Or did they walk in one day and begin engaging in person in some way? And that begins to tell you the kind of relationship that they want, like Rob was talking about earlier. Okay, if they've done all online stuff here, let's keep doing it that way. Let's see what they've opened, what content they engaged with. Let's talk more about that. So I think marketing can use some of that back end creepy stuff where we know what you read, when you read it, what kind of device you were on when you read it, how many times you opened it, did you forward it to a friend? I mean, we know all of that stuff if they've been in our CRM or in our purview. And then we can give that kind of information to our advancement friends and say, listen, they've been following and paying attention for a while. This was the first gift, but they've actually been engaging with us on content like this for the past year or two. See why, maybe get a little personal here without being too creepy and letting them know that you know all that about them.
Caitlin, I've got one more for Susan.
Yeah.
And that is, I sometimes control the pace of the communication in the stewardship process and let them know that what's coming up next. So let me tell you what that sounds like. If I am engaged with them during a certain month, I might say, I'm going to leave the door open and tell them when I'm going to be back in touch with them specifically. So I'm going to say, listen, I really want to connect with you again after our students get back from spring break. Many of them are studying abroad, and their first experiences studying abroad outside of the pandemic should be lots to report about. And I know you're interested in that. What that does is it says, it's not creepy. They know I'm going to contact them sometime in March. I've paced the communication, and I've established a situation where they're going to expect me to communicate with them next and know exactly when that is.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Susan. And I think we had a follow-up question too right after that, Jess.
Yeah, we have one other question from Grace asking about these major donors that are new, but once we have them, they don't respond. How do you feel about posting them for more info?
How do we feel about asking them for more information?
Once there's no response after engaging with them.
So if they have actually made a gift, and I have reached out and there's been no response, I'm going to continue to communicate with them. I'm going to continue to create touches. I am going to sneak in some contacts, some way to try to get some dialogue or feedback. I'm going to try to continue to show impact. And sometimes these can be fall in the category of what ends up being our lapsed donors, right? And I'm going to just give you the mindset sometimes in the profile of that typical lapsed donor. They made an investment, and in their minds, they say, I already gave to X. They don't see themselves as regular, annual, or and they really see themselves as project-based or initiative-based, right? So completing an initiative and showing that it's finished and moving on to the next initiative is in my opinion, one of the best ways to try to bring them back in, because it's something new, it's something fresh. I always look at donors and I say to myself, did they give during the first third of the initiative? middle third once they saw people on board, or the latter third, right? And they begin to sometimes show a pattern that helps you in knowing when to communicate with them for the next project or initiative.
I think those are one of the hardest folks to reach, because to Susan's point earlier, there's a point at which you've overdone it and you need to sort of continue to keep them on. It sounds like you've written handwritten notes, Grace, and you've done a few things that are personal. You followed the steps that you're supposed to follow. You've been personal, you've been specific, you've shown impact, like Rob's saying. I think that's where you kind of realize that they're less engaged. You keep them on all of the channels. You continue to tell them about the impact. And then you keep an eye out for initiatives that are similar to the one that they supported before, and let them know, hey, I know you helped support this before specifically. We'd love your support on this one again. Can we talk about that? So I think, continuing to follow up in specific and personal ways, but the pace and how much you're doing it should probably drop off a little bit after 5 or 6 touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. And let yourself off the hook a little bit. Folks are busy. I now that I analyze myself as a donor after, almost doing this for 3 decades, I'm the worst donor, particularly for my kids' schools. And I'm just awful at answering sometimes that email from the director of development. And I'm in this line of work, right? But we're all busy. So sometimes sometimes don't take it personally. Caitlin, I'm going to throw it back to you because I know that some folks leave at the top of the hour here, and I want to make sure you finish.
Sure thing. Well, and we're almost done here. So thank you everyone for sticking through it. We are going to send a survey. So we're going to lead by example here and ask all of you who have given us a time investment today to just answer a few questions about how it went. And if you felt like you learned some of the things that we outlined in the beginning. We'd also love to know what other topics we could discuss. Rob and Compass and myself and idfive would love to continue this as a resource because marketing and advancement don't always work together as well as they should. So we're happy to continue this with maybe a webinar about storytelling if you'd be interested. We're also going to send out to you a few resources. One, the deck. 2, that activation journey. I know it's very high level, but to see it outlined in an infographic, is helpful for you to consume a large amount of information in a short period of time. But for maybe even those higher up who would like to see the landscape of what you're doing and how it all works together, this activation journey is a great way to show that and keep the attention span of those who don't do marketing and advancement all the time. So we'll send that out. And the last thing we'll send out is a tool that we use. Really, it's a decision matrix, but it also serves as an opportunity to have a few inputs of data and let it output to you. It's a rudimentary tool. Have it output to you at different levels of donors based on the activities that they've performed, so that you can start adding in data and then use this tool to see what level really is this donor. Are they a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 5, 4, or 5? Some of you have fancy CRMs that do that, and then some of us still operate in Excel spreadsheets with things like this. So we're happy to send that over as well. And this has been recorded, so we're happy to send this recording out. I think I hit on everything, but if I didn't, Rob or Jess, let me know.
No, I think you did. Jessica, are there any more questions that folks asked? You can see.
I think we covered everything. Lori would love to hear more about effective surveys, so that's a great topic for any upcoming webinars. But as of questions, I think we are good. If there aren't any remaining.
So the survey one we can follow up on, and we'll go back and look at the more specific comments and certainly follow up with those individuals. Anyone have any other questions in the couple minutes that we have left here? I think we're doing okay on time.
I'll ask a question. This is
Yeah.
Kristen Bramall. Hi. I'm just wondering, I think we've all dealt with, I'm thinking of a donor who is kind of multiple levels, and maybe I'm wrong on this because we didn't necessarily put a dollar figure to this, right? But it's that person that's maybe not giving a major gift, but demanding the attention or the level of involvement or engagement in that leadership or planning that is relevant to a more major gift donor. And so I'd love some feedback on that about what that balance looks like, particularly if you've pushed the donor, you know that you're putting that effort in and you're pushing them to try to increase their giving, but it's not really moving with any substance.
Yeah, boy, those are the donors that just suck the life out of you, right? they um, they um, they require so much of your attention, and then you look at the opposite of that, the donor that never asks you for anything, and then just writes the big check, and it's all done, right? So I don't know that I have a good answer for you, because that's part of our work in relationship management with our donors, in making them always feel valued, but trying to manage their time against the whole system, if you will. So
I'm wondering if maybe, because I think your level process was really fascinating as you think about the personalities or the personas of those donors. And I don't know, maybe anyone has an idea of what we think the persona of that donor is and where they might fit into that.
I have a question for you, Kristen. Do we know that person has the capacity to give more, or have they sort of peaked? Have they done as much as they can? I don't know if you know that, but I think that would change my mind about how much I might spend time on them or not.
Sure. And I think perhaps, and I'm speaking of a variety of donors, of course, but I think generally, yes, the assumption is understood that research tells us that they do have the capacity, or peers or networks or their bubble convinces us so, but doesn't seem to be with our organization. So whether it's a priority or it's just a timing, as we know, is so critical.
I think, and I'd love to hear if anybody else has suggestions for this. I think where you can engage them on things that maybe appear as though lower stakes opportunities that feel like they're making a big impact. So it almost I have 4 kids, and it almost reminds me of my kids, like making a big deal of something that they've done or a way that they've participated or something to make them feel like they were a big part of it. But in reality, they cracked 3 eggs to help you make the cake that, you know what I mean? You cleaned up after. And so I think whether it's leading a volunteer opportunity or giving them a platform or speaking opportunity at something like a luncheon or something like that, where they can appear to have maybe more than they actually are. I don't know, Rob, you said you may have another thing too.
I got one more. So sometimes for this profile, my talking points sound a little like this. You have been a member of our community for a very long time. You have emerged as one of our leading supporters and advocates. You get us, you understand us. As a leader, we would love for you to set the pace for our next initiative. What would it take for you to give a gift of blank and make it large enough for them to either rise to it, right? Because they want to be that leader, or they realize I can't quite play in that league anymore, right? And it's not so much to put them in a bad place. That's not what we're doing. But it is putting into context where you need them to be, especially if they have the capacity, because you say they have the capacity. If they have that capacity, I want them to be that leader, that donor who leads the pack, and so that everyone else can follow.
It's a great question.
Other questions? That was a really good one.
Let's see, Susan's got one. Advice on understanding donor advised funds or knowing their capacity to give. So for example, a donor advised fund went from $1,500 to $3,500 to $7,500. Are we at the top of their gifts now?
That one's a hard one to verify, I'm going to tell you. And usually we are doing a lot of that work through looking at institutional history and patterns. And so I may have to give you some scenarios offline about this one, because here's the profile of that donor. The gifts continue to get larger. because folks start out with a smaller donor advised fund and then they contribute more to it and more to it and more to it, and it's growing and their gifts are growing. So you just have no idea what their capacity could be. It takes a while for them to max out once they really start to manage their philanthropy in a different kind of way amongst all the organizations that they support. So this one I can't say that there's a science around it. But who said that question? Let me see who that is so that we can get you some more information. Susan. Okay. All right. Susan, I want to see if I can get you some more information. I've got someone on my team who tracks donor advised funds a little more than I do. Okay.
Any last questions before we close? Questions or comments? Okay.
Oh, well, Caitlin, this has been fun. We got to do it again.
I agree. Thank you all so much for spending time with us. We will, like I said, follow up via email with all of you, but just really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Great.
Enjoy
Thanks,
your Wednesday, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Wonderful, Susan.
Oh, wow.